Hi, my name is Gibson, and I'm the owner and founder of the Personal Development School. This is your daily breakthrough video, and today I want to talk a little bit about the healthy habits for the anxious attachment style individual. Before I get started, I do want to let everybody know that I am coming up with a whole bunch of courses that will be launching towards the end of the summer. Right now, those course offerings and all the different details about them are actually located on the Personal Development School website. So if you go to the www.personaldevelopmentschool.com and you click on transformational courses on the drop-down menu, you will see a whole bunch of courses that we're launching. We're filming and recording and creating all this exciting content. So if you want to reserve early bird prices now, the courses are super affordable and we're offering 25% off for early bird prices. So all you have to do is go in there, type in your email, and type in the courses that you want to reserve, and we're going to keep you on a list so that when they come out, you have a special price reserved for you. So let's go into the material for today, and we will be doing specifically a course for anxious attachment style, all the different attachment styles, and all the courses are going to come with workbooks, worksheets, summaries, self-discovery questionnaires, tools, all kinds of really amazing stuff. So let's go into the content. So we're going to talk a little bit about healthy habits for the anxious attachment style individual. So number one, you first want to understand why you have unhealthy habits in a specific area of your life, namely relationships. And the reason for this, if you're not already aware, is because at some point in early childhood, you were shown a ton of love and connection and affection by a very close parent or caregiver or somebody else, but there was a ton of incongruency. So you learned basically not to trust the consistency and stability of this connection. And what this basically led to was this feeling of, hungering for this thing that you were shown, almost like you're given, something really special, really important, something that you're actually wired for, and then it's taken away, and then it's brought back, and then it's taken away. And that inconsistency is so strong, you form this almost chemical dependency on this connection. And so much of your life and space can actually be revolving around trying to find a way to get those connection needs met, to the point where you can almost be, sort of compare it to an addict without their fix. And there's a lot of research that shows that anxious attachment individuals are almost have a bit of a neurochemical dependency around oxytocin, which is the bonding neurochemical, and this sort of dependency on relationships. And usually anxious attachment style individuals have a deep, deep need for emotional connection, for validation, for feeling good enough, for feeling significant, for feeling nurtured, having affection. These are all really, really important qualities that your identity can often revolve around in your adult life because literally of the incongruency that you saw or received in childhood. And again, this can come about in different ways. It can be that you have one warm parent and one cold parent. It can be that your parents are both very warm, but they work a lot. It can be that your parents were very warm and then some kind of traumatic event happened and they became depressed and withdrew. There's so many different ways this can come about. But what matters is that you recognize that this pattern lives in your subconscious mind now so that you have the ability to reprogram this stuff going forward. So I actually have a whole video on subconscious reprogramming related to the anxious attachment style individual. But for now, we're going to talk about the behavioral components because we can reprogram at the thought level, the belief level, the emotional pattern level, and we can also reprogram at the action level. So today we're going to talk about these really healthy behaviors and actions that are required to help you behaviorally reprogram some of this attachment style. So first and foremost, you want to recognize that the unhealthy habits and patterns you have are basically dependency on relationships as a means of valuing or validating your self-worth, your self-identity, and feeling this sort of need to rely on relationships around you as a form of safety. And so what this means is that there's generally this imbalance where you may not have a solid identity to a certain degree outside of your romantic relationships or always being around friends and friendships. So you can be a really social and charismatic person, but sometimes there's a big imbalance in terms of having this sense of self if those relationships were not available to you in your life. If they were not present for a period of time, you might actually experience like almost physical withdrawal symptoms. So something really important to note is that your brain is like a needs meeting machine. It's always trying to find a way to get its needs met as fast as possible. And this basically means that your brain will sacrifice, the most effective or strategic way of getting its needs met in order to get the needs met most quickly. And this is a subconscious pattern that's running all the time. So if you notice, for example, that you have needs, and you have needs for connection, you have needs for safety, you have needs for stability, if your brain is always meeting these needs through people, this might be a subconscious program that exists. Your subconscious might have built all these positive associations saying this is the way to meet our needs. And that's not wrong, but it becomes unhealthy when there's an imbalance, when we don't have the availability to identify what our needs are individually and meet those needs ourselves, and to have that relationship to ourselves, to be aware of what our needs are also in the first place. So if we're not a master of being able to identify and meet our own needs as well as to identify and express our needs to others, then we're basically missing one side of the equation, and that can create a significant imbalance, which can manifest itself as a lot of challenges in our external lives later. And something also important to note, let's say you're the anxious attachment style individual, and let's say that you're always getting your needs met externally through people, with people. If there is this imbalance and you don't meet these needs internally, if you look at it just from like a really realistic perspective, the external world is like the most challenging thing to control. We really don't have a whole lot of control in our external world, our external reality, our external relationships. Like, we can have a best friend or a partner or somebody we care about and love so much, but they could have a bad day and they could be unavailable, or they could get really busy with work, or they could have to move or relocate. And we don't have control over these things, but we do have a certain degree of control over our internal reality. And so if you're putting all of your eggs in the basket of your external reality and relationships, you're sort of also setting yourself up for future challenges and kind of painful experiences at some point. So we really, if you're the anxious attachment person, you really want to, part of your healthy habits and healing is to come back to yourself and connect to yourself and build a relationship with yourself. You'll even notice, if you're this attachment style, that you sort of wake up and like the first thing you're thinking about out of bed is like people. You're brushing your teeth and you're thinking about your work and your colleagues and what they think of you and what your boss is going to say and what you're going to do after work and with who. And you'll notice that there's almost this like self-abandonment that's occurring at a subconscious level just in your thoughts. Like, your thoughts are directed so externally, so outside of you, as opposed to like this internal relationship. Like, how am I feeling? How did I sleep? What do I need today? What intentions do I want to set today? How do I want to feel connected to myself? What do I want to feel today? There's this sort of like disconnect between you and relationship to yourself. So healthy habit number 1, we want to learn how to reconnect to ourselves. If this is you, this means actually giving attention to your internal reality. And this can happen in like a whole bunch of different ways. But what I really recommend is just creating like a habit or a ritual for self-connection. And this can be, meditation, this can be journaling, this can be going through, I have a self-discovery questionnaire posted on the Personal Development School website, and it's like a ton of self-discovery questions. You could pick 1 or 2 a day and just go through those that are deep introspective questions to sort of connect to yourself and learn more about yourself. You can go through your feelings and your needs. I have a worksheet on the website for that as well. But basically, you want to be connecting to like who you are. And you can almost imagine, like, if you had to relocate yourself, or if you had to be alone for 5 years, like, you want to start asking yourself these questions, like, who would I be? What would I do? And you want to start finding out who you are outside of these relationships that you're sort of using to create part of your identity. And again, it's not bad to have like, a rich network of people and enriching relationships, or, a powerful romantic relationship. but you don't want it to be at the expense of other elements in your life, namely yourself. Okay. So, and sometimes we'll see when an anxious attachment style person goes through a breakup or something like that, it's almost like they become a drug addict without their fix. Like they can really have these intense emotional withdrawal symptoms where they're like, they don't know how to be alone, and they panic, and they're restless, and they can't sleep, and it's almost as if they're going through some form of withdrawal. And so creating that sense of self-identity is so important so that you don't have to be faced with being consumed by that experience if something in your relationship doesn't go well at a point in time. So number one, those daily self-connection rituals, again, like highly recommend meditation, journaling, introspective questions, just something that actually brings you back to yourself, that makes you reflect. Number two, it's also important when you're in a relationship, or if you're, I see this a lot with anxious attachment style people, they tend to go from relationship to relationship to relationship. It's like they have a hard time just learning how to be alone. And so if this is you and you're just coming out of relationships, or, you just ended a relationship, or a relationship is in the process of ending, don't just go running to the next relationship. Take some time to process the experience, and what you felt, and what you wanted to improve upon in the relationship, and what patterns you brought into the relationship that were unhealthy, and how you could improve that area of your life, and what you did and didn't like about the partner you were with, so you can, assess what your needs are in a relationship more often. Because another thing I see anxious attachment style individuals sometimes do is they will sometimes just sort of be in a relationship with whoever's like convenient, and they get strong feelings for, they have fun with, and they're not necessarily like deeply reflecting on like what their needs are in a relationship, and what a healthy relationship means to them, and how they want to show up in the relationship, and what needs they have to sort of meet within themselves and work on. And so there tends to sort of be this balancing without like a ton of reflection in between, and that can lead to challenges in relationships again. So that's a really important second step. Number three, and I think this sort of goes for all attachment styles, and you'll hear me say this quite a bit, learn to identify your own needs. Again, you can go through that needs worksheet that I have, and you can just sort of go, there's a ton of needs on there that are sort of our tertiary needs, like our day-to-day needs. And just to go through there and sort of number, your top 10 or top 15, and just notice them, because the more aware you are in advance, the easier it is to recognize your needs in real time. And the easier it becomes to express and communicate these needs in the dynamic of a relationship, which is super important to preventing resentment, to feeling fulfilled in our relationships, to holding space when somebody else is expressing their needs, all very important characteristics. Next, you want to get into the habit of like ending the self-abandonment. And this might sound silly because it's very subconscious, but again, like you wake up and right away you're brushing your teeth, you're thinking about everybody else, you spend so much time with other people, and there's just this ongoing sort of background space of self-abandonment happening. So you want to regularly be like, how am I feeling? How was my day? Like get into the habit of self-reflecting, so that you're balancing the relationships with people outside of you and your external reality with time to connect and reflect to the relationship inside of you, because it's a very, very real thing and has a dramatic impact on all of the relationships outside of us. The next thing, develop all 7 areas of your life. Try to have a healthy identity in terms of your behaviors, your activities. So the 7 areas of life are career, financial, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, and social. And we can also sort of say family in there too, or we can put social and family into relational. And you want to really focus on the areas that are not involving other people, because usually your family or relationships will be pretty well developed, at least the romantic relationships or friendships or something in there. Family relationships. And so you want to really zone in on the other areas of your life and try to develop as much as you can, strategies and goals and things that keep you rich in those areas, so that you've got that balance and stability in your self-identity. The last thing I'll say is that, actually the last 2 things I'll say is that the healthiest anxious attachment style individuals I do see, even that haven't done a lot of work on themselves, like, deep sort of subconscious reprogramming work, they tend to be people who have a lot of purpose in their life. So if you have a ton of purpose and you've got meaning and you've got really big goals and dreams and things that are deeply intrinsically meaningful to you, that can be a really, really important thing. So to really reflect on some of that is again, very empowering, and actually has a really beautiful impact on the health of your romantic relationships. And lastly, because one of the biggest wounds for the anxious attachment person is that they don't really know how to self-soothe, it's extremely important that they practice self-soothing and processing their emotions all the way through. And this means like understanding our emotions, understanding why we feel the way that we do, shifting our perceptions to equilibrate our emotional state. I have a very detailed video on this called How to Process Your Emotions. Please feel free to check that out, because it will give you, a 5-step process in there to really effectively work through your emotions. And I recommend doing that at the end of every evening if you can, to make a ritual or habit out of it. So I hope this was extremely helpful. Thank you so much for watching. For the anxious attachment course we have coming up, and all the other attachment style courses, please visit www.personaldevelopmentschool.com, and please reserve your seat there, or please email me if you have any questions, Thais@personaldevelopmentschool.com. Thank you so much for watching.